Okay, and welcome back to Fast Jet Performance then. My name is Tim Davies, and today we're going to look at why Gen Z are not joining the military. Okay, a few documents to have a look at, guys. Obviously, this is the aircraft I used to fly here. I used to sit in the back seat there because I was an instructor on the Hawk T2, previously a Tornado GR4 pilot. And one thing I get a lot is emails from young people asking me about the military. Should they join? What should they join? How long should they stay in? But one thing I have noticed recently is those emails have really slowed down, if not just to a trickle, to be fair. And we're going to try and work out why that is, and what's actually happened to take that place is a lot of people are writing me today, serving people, saying, Tim, I'm thinking of leaving. And I haven't had that before. I haven't had the whole kind of retention issue. I've had the recruitment but not the retention issue. So we're going to have a look at them, why Gen Z might well be leaving or not joining the military. And this document kind of highlights it really. The UK military sees 30% decline in regular forces recruits. This is the back end of last year. This is across the board. 30% is a hell of a figure. So the strength of the UK armed forces dropped by 3.3 between this month, October, pretty much, on 2022. With just over 5,000 people joining the regular forces, which is a 30% decrease during the reporting period. Now, there were some mandated redundancies and everything else that will skew that figure. Now, when I was in, I think I've spoken about this before, I went through around about 2008, maybe 2009. I went through an 8-year period of 0% pay increase with a 2-year period of a 1% pay increase, which was vastly below inflation all that time. What that's worked out now, and you can find some figures on the internet if you want to, is around about 25% reduction, I believe it is, in the pay of what would be a senior non-commissioned officer, sergeant, staff sergeant, something like that, in real terms. Now, what I used to do is I always used to peg my pay to a particular vehicle, which used to be an Audi A4, bog standard 2-litre diesel, and I always knew how much that car cost and how I'd feel about the cost of that car, because I have one, I have two in fact. And then I started feeling towards the end of my career, I can't afford this anymore. Now I know Audi do a lot better research than say the military do in pay, and yeah, it became a big problem. So here you can see them, military pay has been an issue of contention, have been affected by historical public sector pay freezes like I've just talked about, and also a very steep rise in the UK living costs as a result of rocketing inflation, which is hitting all of us, of course. It says only those on rates below 24,000 received a pay rise of 250. All other pay increment levels remaining frozen at those old pay. Now, the thing is, one of the things I will say, Gen Z are much more informed than I ever was when I went into the Royal Navy back in '98. They have all these devices, don't they? And they can look up, they can Google things, they can watch these kind of videos. It's probably a bit too long for them if it's over 5 minutes, of course, but they can find the information on the internet. They can see what the pay is, they can see what the pay was, they can see what the pay is going to be. They can look up everything pretty much, and then they can decide whether they go into the military or whether they go into a different business. And one thing I would say, that if you go into the military, you're going to need to go in for a trade, because one day you're going to leave, and believe me, no one actually really wants fast jet pilots when you leave the military. That's why I started a business, don't get me wrong. But there are some trades you'll come out of the military and you can earn really, really well. That's something I hear for Gen Z. How long should I stay in the military? And when I joined the military, it wasn't how long should I stay, it was like, well, I'm just going to stay forever. You know what I mean? I thought there was a whole career. I left after 20 years for various reasons, but I thought I was going to stay for much longer. So as you can see here then, the Royal Navy recruitment fall could hamper ability to crew the nuclear deterrent unless fixed, defence sources say, and this has happened over the last 18 months. They say it's a perfect storm. I don't necessarily believe that perfect storm. This just smacks of the Royal Navy or all recruitment throughout the services just not having their finger on the pulse and just not really understanding Gen Z at all. And I'm quite switched on with Gen Z. I train them now, in fact, in my school. But you can see it suffered a serious drop in recruitment, and it says here that one source did describe it as a general collapse in the flow of new recruits into the service. The Navy rejected this characterization, saying there was a challenge, but then the next month it said it had an emergency Navy board to discuss the crisis. So yeah, obviously something bad's going on. The rest of the article then, it says we're looking at ways of reversing that decline. I think when the decline has already happened, it's a bit late to reverse that. And it says that they're putting some recruits forward. It's also saying down here, these main points here, a shortage of up to 35% of recruitment staff in some areas of the UK because the reservists who used to fill the role have quit, And that was to do with the fact they didn't have job security in the future, and so they had to go and find something else. Understandable. I think the Navy had been quite lax on that. Alleged problems with the internal efforts to use analytics hadn't come in time, apparently. Wider failure by the government to ensure armed forces pay keeps up with inflation, which it hasn't, and I've just spoken about that. Increasing number of sailors quitting the service, poor retention has put pressure on the need to recruit because outflow is stripping inflow, and I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, to be fair, guys. They're saying that the reason that the submarine service is short is because people use these mobile phones and they don't want to be out of contact with their friends and be out of contact watching TikTok videos. I don't believe that's the truth. I just don't believe they pay them enough. If you pay people proportionally, believe me, they will do pretty much whatever you want. You just got to up the pay, and at the moment the Armed Forces pay review has not actually decided that the pay needs to be improved. Another factor I hear from younger generations that do write to me is saying that they're kind of sick of all this stuff. They're against all this whole diversity, equity, inclusion stuff. They know it's driven by higher corporations, the World Economic Forum and everything else, and they're just not into it. They don't want anything to do with it. They realise that if you're going to discriminate against someone, as my previous videos have shown, that it could be them you're discriminating against. That could be, everything could be them. It could be their chance for promotion, their chance for awards, and all of a sudden that other guy gets it because of their skin colour, or the girl gets it because of her gender. This is something that obviously I did take the Air Force to task over, and I don't want to go into this document because I'm kind of sick of it. I don't want a channel to be about this stuff, so we're going to move on. So yes, they're looking at using regular reserves, basically guys like myself who have left to come back in and surge when they need to, and personally I'm not interested. I did 20 years. The last thing I want to do is go and do any more. If I want to do more, I'd be in the reserves now, wouldn't I? But I'm not. But we do have financial issues, and that's why they're freezing the civil service pay at the moment at the Ministry of Defence to try and get more money into the services. We are quite happy, of course, to throw a lot of money at immigrants coming over here and put them up in hotels and everything else. There's a lot more that you can find on that sort of thing. I don't want to go into that on this channel, but what we can't do is find money for the men and women that defend us and keep us safe at night. It's just one of those things. It's just the country's priorities, and I don't know why it's the case other than there's an agenda, and that's something I've got down here on my notes, guys, because I'm talking about this. So we've covered that. Yeah, the young Gen Z now are very well informed about this kind of thing, but they also see that, like the Ukraine war, for example, is about business. We know that. BlackRock have already got the contracts to rebuild the country. They're not stupid, these young people. They know that to be the case. That's one of the things. And they look back. What did we achieve in Afghanistan, Iraq? What did we do exactly? Why would they ever want to go into Ukraine? What would they achieve there? Okay, what's that about? That was one war that never needed to happen unless you had massive amounts of stock, of course, in BAE Systems and Lockheed Martin and everything else. We understand that, which politicians, of course, do. Primarily, one of the things I hear from young people is about patriotism. And this I just thought, yeah, I get that, guys. I understand that. You know what I mean? They don't feel the same way about it as I used to. Remember, I work out under a Union flag in my garage every morning, but they don't tend to do that. And one of the things that they were saying is, look, I need to go in, get a trade, get out again. I understand. That's one of those things. You'll get it. But for me, it was about the service. And I had a comment on a recent YouTube video I did, actually, and I'll just show that comment now. And this video is about the shocking truth behind Air Force bonuses, a pilot perspective. And a guy wrote to me, Paul Wright here, who I went on what's called a staff ride. I took him to Germany. He worked with Cranwell at the time, and he wants to challenge me on something, and he did. And I wrote a reply to him here. It's obviously going to be unpopular view. A lot of people write to me with unpopular views, but he says, I feel strongly that you're sending out the wrong message now for the next generation. Now, of course, what I do is I speak to the next generation. Unlike Paul, I speak to the next generation here. So they write to me, I write back, or I do videos for them that never appear on YouTube. Paul does none of this, by the way. Zero of this. But Paul, of course, and you can see I'm a little bit upset about this, gets to comment on. I don't care. It's a YouTube thing. I don't care. But he obviously thinks he can tell me what I should be doing, and of course that's never going to end well, is it? No. You don't do it for the big cheese. I think it means the money. You do it for your country, family, mates, and for those who are thinking of a career in the Royal Air Force, just go for it. Yeah, fair point. But money is a massive factor, and people can't afford to go into the military right now and still earn that kind of money and try and get onto the housing ladder. I think a sergeant now is earning 25% less than they would have been if they kept up with inflation over the last 12, 15 years, something like that. 25% less, guys. How can we? And sergeants, these senior NCOs, these are the people that are keeping this thing together. You lose these people, you're going to be in a world of pain, absolute world of pain. I wrote back to him and said, if you want to have a look at the video here, but I said, look, I've been holding the Air Force to account. I've been holding the military to account through here, and I'm known as a subversive to the government at the moment. The British government see me as a subversive because they feel I'm taking down British policy, which is not necessarily the case, but in some aspects, of course, they're not necessarily wrong. I just think what they're doing with diversity, equity, and inclusion is absolutely significantly damaging our ability to fight. I'm just going to finish, guys. Just going to finish by talking about that patriotism. Now, when I wake up in the morning and I don't want to do this, I go to my garage and I work out under the flag of the Union. And on the other side of the garage, I've got the English flag, of course, the St. George flag. And I have those two flags in there to remind me what it means to be an Englishman and obviously to be British. I got written to by a Typhoon pilot. So this is a guy serving actively on squadrons, and he said, in the military, in the Royal Air Force, Tim, we like the fact that you are talking about all these things, and that's great. Some of the things we don't like, but most of it we do fine, whatever. A lot of people, when you're in the military, of course, you're very blinkered, so you don't get the whole full picture. And he said, but one of the things that we don't particularly like is you having the flag in the background. We think it's a bit nationalist, and this is why, of course, the British government think that I'm a white supremacist, even though I give funds. The only school I give funds to is a black school in Georgia in America, which is a bit random, with young black men. But they think I am, and that's come from sources, not through email, not through phone, when they've hacked all my devices anyway, I know that. But so I'm known as this bit of a subversive, because I do talk in front of the flag, just as the Prime Minister does, of course, just as everyone should if they're in government. But in the Typhoon squadrons, or some Typhoon squadrons in the Royal Air Force, that's seen as being a bit of a nationalistic thing to do. This is in an RAF squadron. Me talking in front of the flag, the front of our flag, is seen as the wrong thing to do. And I think we're fighting that kind of battle. So Gen Z, they're not really looking at it like I used to, patriotism. Because even the guys in now aren't looking at it as patriotism. Even the guys flying the jets at the moment don't seem to be doing that, which is very odd to me. And of course, the fewer people join the military, the fewer people are actually there to do the work, and therefore the work becomes more difficult and harder, and there's more of it, and everyone leaves. And that's one of the big issues we've got. I'm going to leave it there, but I would say the comments are a great place for you to recalibrate my mind on what is a bit of a diatribe, really, on why I think Gen Z are not really joining. And I understand it. That's what I'm saying. When they write to me, I get it. Would I join today? No, I wouldn't join today. I see it as so few opportunities. I don't believe the seniors in the military or the British government have the best interests at heart of the people joining the military, and this is why you're seeing people with considerable experience leaving. But again, in the comments, guys, let me know. I'd love to for someone to come out there as a Gen Z guy and say, hey, this is why I was joining and this is why I'm not joining now. I'll listen to that. Thanks so much, Tim Davies, Fast Performance.